You'd think that after 74 years, nothing could surprise you anymore. But betrayal has a way of creeping in quietly, like dampness in the bones before a storm. I gave my son everything, my health, my years, my patience, and now he walks through my house like he owns it. But this isn't just a story about loss. It's about what happens when a quiet woman has nothing left to lose. It's a revenge story, just not the kind you're used to. I've always woken up early. Before the sun even touches the hills of Asheville, I'm already up, tea brewing, slippers shuffling, joints protesting. It's the rhythm of my life carved into me from decades of working 12-hour shifts at the county hospital. My name is Evelyn Barrett. I'm 74 years old. I live in a 3-bedroom farmhouse just outside the city. White paint chipped by time, a porch swing that creaks like it's whispering secrets. This house, it's not just where I live. It's where my life happened. I moved here with my husband Carl when Aaron, our son, was only 5. We didn't have much back then, just a few savings, a secondhand truck, and my stubbornness. Carl was a gentleman, the quiet type. A builder, not just of houses, but of dreams. He passed 12 years ago, cancer. After he died, it was just me and the house. Aaron had his own life in Raleigh, a finance job, a new wife every few years. I didn't mind. That's the way it goes, right? You raise them, love them, let them go. Then came the phone call. Aaron said he'd remarried. Again. This time to a woman named Kelsey, someone different, he claimed, sophisticated. And we're thinking of moving back to Asheville for a bit, he added, just until things settle with her business. I didn't even hesitate. I said yes, not because I needed company, but because part of me wanted to feel needed again. I missed the sound of a full house. I missed the illusion that family could circle back around. So I opened my doors. I cleaned out the guest room, stocked the fridge with Aaron's favorite things, and even bought new curtains because Kelsey was sensitive to light. I ignored the raised eyebrows from neighbors. I told myself this was a second chance to feel like a mother again. At first, things were fine. Aaron helped mow the lawn. Kelsey baked gluten-free muffins I didn't understand but pretended to enjoy. There were dinners on the porch, laughter that felt almost real. I even caught myself humming while folding laundry. But slowly, things changed. Kelsey began commenting on the decor. These doilies, they're charming, but maybe a bit much? Do you really need all these teacups? Aaron stayed silent, which hurt more than her words. I started finding my things moved. Family photos rearranged, furniture shifted, my favorite quilt packed away. One day, I walked into the kitchen and found Kelsey scrubbing the walls. "Oh," she said brightly, "I'm just getting rid of the old smell. It's probably the wood or something." That something was my life, my memories, the scent of Sunday stews and Carl's aftershave. She was bleaching it all away. Still, I bit my tongue, because that's what mothers do. Until one evening, Aaron came home holding a stack of papers. "Mom," he said, "we need to update some things. Just routine, tax stuff." I didn't read them. I just signed where he told me to, because that's what trust looks like. Now, looking back, I should have asked questions. I should have read the fine print. But after a lifetime of giving, you don't expect the knife to come from the same hand you once taught to hold a spoon. It's funny. People think revenge stories are all fire and fury, but mine didn't start that way. It started with soft-boiled eggs, worn slippers, and a woman who just wanted to be remembered for the love she gave. Not the house she owned, not the papers she signed. The pain didn't come all at once. It came in waves. Quiet, steady, almost polite. And I let it, because I believed love, even one-sided, could shield you. But I was wrong. And now, with this heart that's been bent but not broken, I'm about to do what I should have done long ago. Not for revenge, but for respect. For the woman I used to be. For the one I'm becoming again. The first time I noticed something was off, it was the pantry. My canned peaches were gone. The ones I'd jarred myself from the little tree out back 3 summers ago when my hands still worked steady and my knees didn't pop like popcorn every time I knelt down. Instead, the shelves were filled with store-brand protein bars, almond milk, and glass containers labeled in some minimalist font. Meal prep Monday. Kelsey's smoothies don't touch. I stood there for a long moment, hand resting on an empty jar that used to hold cinnamon sticks. Something inside me tightened. Not anger exactly, but something older, something colder, a familiar echo. You're not needed here anymore. Later that night, I asked Aaron about it, just lightly. "Oh," he said, without looking up from his phone. "Kelsey did a clean out. She said some of that stuff was expired." "Those peaches weren't expired," I said quietly. He shrugged. "You didn't seem to eat them." I stared at him across the dinner table. He didn't look up. The tablecloth I had embroidered years ago, roses and vines, was gone. Replaced with something gray, textured, materne. It was like watching my life get erased in soft, subtle strokes. A week after that, Kelsey decided to paint the hallway. Not that she asked. I came home from the grocery store and found everything tarped. The soft, eggshell blue, Carl's favorite, was already buried under primer. She waved at me like it was her house. "Hey, Evelyn, hope you don't mind. The color felt kind of tired, you know?" I stood there holding a bag of oranges and oat bran and tried not to cry. I didn't say anything that night, or the night after, but I began to keep a little mental tally. Each picture frame removed, each throw blanket folded and hidden. Each time Aaron said, "It's just a small change, Mom." And the worst part? I still made dinner every night, still folded their laundry when they left it in the dryer, still smiled when Kelsey brought in those overpriced candles that smelled like concrete and confusion. Because that's what mothers do. Until the day Aaron brought home another set of papers. "We need to simplify the ownership structure," he said casually, "for tax purposes. It's easier if we have some things in Kelsey's name." I raised an eyebrow. "What kind of things?" "Oh, just admin stuff," he said, brushing it off. "Bills, the water line, insurance. Nothing major. You'll still live here, obviously." The word obviously did a strange thing to me, like the world he lived in was so far removed from mine. "Why her name?" I asked. "She's just better with the logistics," he said, "and we're trying to build up her credit, you know?" I didn't know. I didn't want to know. Still, I hesitated. He sensed it. "Mom," he said, "you trust me, right?" And just like that, I felt it again, that old ache. The one that tells you if you say no, you're selfish, you're difficult, you're making things harder. So I signed. A week later, the internet bill came in Kelsey's name, then the power, then the property tax statement, and finally, quietly, almost politely, a bank envelope addressed not to me, but to Mrs. Kelsey Barrett, primary owner. I stared at that envelope like it was a piece of glass lodged in my chest. Aaron came home that night, smiling. He'd brought Thai food. "I like the green curry," I said, trying to keep it light. "Oh, I thought you didn't eat spicy," he replied, unpacking the bags. "I do now," I murmured. And then, almost too casually, I asked, "So, what does it mean now that the house is in her name?" He froze for half a breath, then laughed. "Mom, it's just on paper. Nothing's really changed." But I felt it. Everything had changed. They'd taken my name off the deed, and no one even thought to tell me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the porch until the air turned cold and the stars blinked low over the trees. I kept thinking about all the birthdays I planned for Aaron, the Halloween costumes I sewed, the night I stayed up, rocking him through the fever that wouldn't break. I kept thinking, was it really so easy to forget me? If you've ever done everything for someone, only to have them act like you were never there, just drop one word in the comments. Invisible. You're not alone. And you're not wrong for feeling it. The next morning, I folded my apron and placed it on the chair by the kitchen window. Kelsey was already talking about renovating the guest bathroom. I listened, nodded, and said nothing. Because I was learning, not how to fight, but how to wait. The thing about being 74 is you've seen storms come and go. You know when something isn't finished. You can feel it, and I could feel it. This wasn't the end. This was just the part where the sky goes very still. right before it breaks wide open. The first notice came tucked inside a plain white envelope. No return address, no markings, just my name, printed neatly in black ink as if it meant something. I sat at the kitchen table, the morning light soft across the faded wood, the smell of coffee still lingering. The porch creaked under the wind. It was supposed to be a normal day, but it wasn't. I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter from Cumberland County Bank informing me that the mortgage on the property at 114 Hollow Pine Road was in default, and the bank was initiating pre-foreclosure proceedings. I stared at it, not fully registering the words. Mortgage, default, foreclosure. This house was paid off 20 years ago. I read the letter again, then again. My hands were shaking, but it wasn't the arthritis this time. It was something worse. Something deeper, fear wrapped in betrayal. I picked up the phone and called Aaron. He answered on the third ring. "Hey, Mom, what's up?" There was no hesitation in his voice, no guilt, no weight. "I got a letter," I said, "from the bank." He was silent for just a beat too long. "Aaron," I said slowly, "why is my house in foreclosure?" "Look," he sighed, "this is complicated. It's not what you think." I waited. "I used the house as collateral," he said. "It was just paperwork. Kelsey's business needed some capital, and the bank offered a good line of credit." I closed my eyes. "You mortgaged my house." "Our house," he corrected, "and it's not like it's gone. Once we stabilize the business, we'll pay it back. This is temporary." "No, Aaron," I said, my voice thin. "This house was never ours. It was mine. I built it with your father. I kept it after he died. I paid it off myself." "Don't be dramatic," he snapped. "It's still your home." I laughed, bitter and quiet. "Is it?" He didn't answer. The next few days were a blur. I pulled out every paper I could find, tax records, deed history, old envelopes with my name and address, all proof that this home belonged to me. But nothing in that stack could fight what Aaron had already done. The bank confirmed it. The property was now tied to a loan of $180,000, signed under Kelsey Barrett as primary borrower, with a notarized power of attorney from me. Only, I had never signed anything. I asked for a copy. The signature on the form? It looked like mine. Almost. But I knew my own hand. I'd signed thousands of consent forms in the ER. I knew the slant, the pressure, the way my E always curled inward like a seashell. This wasn't it. When I confronted Aaron about the forged signature, he shrugged. "It's legal. The notary signed off. Maybe you just forgot." "I didn't forget," I said, teeth clenched. "Come on, Mom. You're 74. Don't do this." That word, "don't do this," landed like a knife. Like I was making a scene, like I was the problem. I looked at my son and I didn't recognize him anymore. He wasn't the boy who cried when he scraped his knee. He was a man who forged his mother's name to build a dream that wasn't even hers. And Kelsey? She didn't even try to hide it. When I walked past the guest room, now her office, I saw her on the phone saying things like, "Yes, once the house clears, we'll put it on the market. I already have 3 interested buyers." I was still living there, still making dinner, still folding towels, and they were already planning to sell it out from under me. Not because I was sick, not because I was forgetful, but because they thought I wouldn't notice. Or worse, they thought I wouldn't fight. One morning, I stepped outside to tend to my hydrangeas and found a "for sale auction pending" sign staked into the ground. No warning, no conversation, just a sign, cold and metal. I ripped it out of the soil and dropped it on the porch. Aaron came home later, looked at it, and said nothing, as if it had always been his right to put it there. That night, I sat in my living room with the lights off. Not crying, not panicking, just empty. Like someone had quietly erased me from the margins of my own life. And if you've ever been made to feel that way, like a guest in the house you built, like a ghost in the family you raised, then you know that kind of pain doesn't scream. It whispers and it lingers. I didn't know what to do next. I didn't have a plan. All I knew was this: I wasn't signing anything else. I wasn't going anywhere, and I wasn't going to be erased quietly. After the sign went up in my yard, something in me went quiet, not from fear, not from shock, but the kind of quiet that happens when a person realizes no one is coming to help. It's funny. For most of my life, I've been loud in small ways. I never shouted. I never made a fuss, but I made things warm. I made them full. Every casserole brought to a grieving family. Every extra blanket folded and left on someone's porch when winter hit early. That was me. Now I couldn't even find the words to ask my son why. Aaron came and went like nothing had happened. He'd pass through the kitchen, tapping at his phone, asking if I remembered to pay the water bill, though it wasn't in my name anymore. Kelsey walked with confidence through my hallway, pausing now and then to tell me, "I found a new rug for the living room. It'll really brighten the space." She called it the space, like the heart of my home was now just empty footage in a listing. I stopped tending the flower beds. I stopped cooking dinner unless I wanted to eat it myself. I stopped offering, explaining, or reminding. Instead, I started sitting. I sat on the porch. I sat by the window. I sat at the edge of the bathtub with a towel in my lap, thinking about what it meant to be forgotten while still alive. It wasn't rage I felt. It was something colder, a deep, bone-heavy ache that said, "You were useful once, but you're in the way now." One afternoon, Kelsey asked if she could paint over the growth chart we'd drawn on the doorframe, the one where we used to mark Aaron's height with a pencil every year on his birthday. "I mean, it's cute and all," she said with that polite smile, "but buyers might want a fresh look." I just stared at her. She shrugged. "I'll cover it with primer." That night, I went to the closet and pulled out an old shoebox filled with photos. Sun-faded snapshots of Aaron in overalls, Carl hammering nails with a cigarette in his mouth, me holding birthday cakes with lopsided candles. I ran my fingers along the edges of those pictures and thought, what did I do all those years for if this is how it ends? The only person I still talked to regularly was Marcy, the neighbor from 2 houses down. She stopped by once a week with fresh eggs or newspaper clippings about local festivals. She didn't know the full story, and I didn't tell her. I couldn't. I was too ashamed. "You okay, Evelyn?" she asked one afternoon, handing me a basket of cucumbers. "Just tired," I said. "You're looking a little thin," she added gently. "I think I'm just smaller now," I said with a half smile. She laughed politely. I don't think she understood what I meant, but maybe you do. Maybe you know what it feels like to be shrinking in your own home, not in size, but in importance, in voice, in visibility. The tipping point came quietly, like everything else. I overheard Aaron talking in the driveway. He was on speakerphone. "Yeah," he said, "we've got the property locked in. My mom's still in it, but we can start showing the place next week." I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I just folded the dish towel in my hand and walked back into the kitchen. The next day, I cleaned my room. Not for them, but for me. I made my bed with the quilt Carl and I picked out when we bought this place. I set my tea on the windowsill. I opened every drawer and took stock of what I'd keep, what I'd leave, and what I'd burn if I had to, because I was done waiting. I didn't have a plan yet. I wasn't ready to fight. But something in me shifted. I had always believed that motherhood was about giving without question, and I had given. But now I saw it. They weren't just taking my house. They were taking my memory of myself, and that I couldn't allow. That night, I walked out to the garden and stood where Carl and I once buried our dog, Toby. It was just a spot of grass now. No marker, no sign, but I remembered. I remembered everything, and I whispered into the wind, "I'm still here." Maybe no one was listening, but that didn't matter, because I heard it, and for the first time in months, that was enough. I didn't call it a plan, not at first. It started as a feeling, a shift in my spine, a different weight in the way I stirred my tea or folded a towel. Something in me had stopped reaching to be heard, and started listening. Closely. To what? To the way Aaron's voice changed when he talked business. To the way Kelsey locked the filing cabinet in what used to be my sewing room. To the word asset, tossed around like it had nothing to do with my life. just real estate on a spreadsheet. That's when I remembered Dolores. We hadn't spoken in years. She used to be the charge nurse when I worked the night shift, smart as a whip, sharp with a clipboard, and always ready with tissues when someone's heart cracked open at 3 a.m. I heard she'd gone into advocacy for elder care rights after retiring, and I had her number, written on the back of a church bulletin I'd saved in a recipe book. I didn't tell Aaron or Kelsey I was going into town. I put on my light blue cardigan, the one with the stitched roses, and walked out the front door with nothing but my handbag and an old folder full of property records. Dolores met me at a diner just off Route 9. Still the same gray bob, still that same no-nonsense voice. She hugged me like I hadn't aged a day. "You look thinner," she said, eyes narrowing. "Something's wrong." I slid the folder across the table. "I think they're trying to take the house," I said. She didn't blink. "Tell me everything." I told her about the refinance, the mortgage letter, the forged signature. Dolores didn't say a word until I finished. Then she leaned back and let out a low whistle. "Evelyn," she said, "this is elder financial abuse." I flinched at the word. Abuse. I didn't want to believe it, I said. "He's my son." She nodded gently. "They always are." Dolores explained things I didn't know. How forged power of attorney documents are more common than people think. How women like me, women who trusted their kids, ended up homeless with no one held responsible. "But we can fight this," she said. "You still have options." That night, I sat in my room and reread every paper she'd given me. She'd highlighted the sections in yellow, underlined in red. Any document signed under misrepresentation may be voidable. Incompetence must be proven to assign guardianship. I wasn't incompetent. I wasn't crazy. I was tired, but sharp as hell, and finally I was angry. Not loud angry, quiet angry, the kind that simmers beneath the surface and never boils over. The kind that remembers everything. The next morning, I started doing yoga again, just 20 minutes, on a mat near the back porch, breathing slow, stretching deep, not because I wanted to be flexible, because I needed to remember that this body still belonged to me. I also began keeping a notebook, just a plain spiral-bound pad from the dollar store. I wrote down everything. When Aaron left the house, what phone calls I overheard, what papers were delivered, what was said word for word, it made me feel sane again, like I was building something real. One afternoon, while Kelsey was out, I went into the office. The cabinet wasn't locked this time. Inside, I found a folder labeled Barrett Property Contingency Sale Timeline. It had viewing dates, estimated listing prices, renovation quotes. There, in ink, was a line that hit me harder than any slap. Owner to vacate by July 10th, negotiable. Vacate? That was me. I closed the folder, put it back exactly the way I found it, and walked outside. The sun was setting over the ridge. I sat on the porch swing and listened to the frogs in the creek and the cicadas humming in the trees. This was still my land, my air, my silence. And in that silence, I realized something. I wasn't just fighting to keep a house. I was fighting to keep my name from being erased. I didn't have a lawyer yet. I didn't have proof. But I had Dolores. I had notes. I had the truth. And for the first time in weeks, I slept through the night. They still didn't know. Aaron still walked around like he held all the cards. Kelsey still called me Ev like we were girlfriends. But something in me had shifted. They couldn't see it, but I could feel it. A quiet fire, starting to burn. I didn't get a warning, just a knock on the door and a half smile from Aaron. "Hey, Mom," he said. "We're having the floors refinished in the main rooms this week. The fumes are going to be rough, so we figured maybe you could go stay with Marcy for a bit." He said it like it was a favor, like I should be grateful. Marcy, my sweet, big-hearted neighbor, had mentioned once or twice that I could visit any time. But this wasn't a visit. This was an eviction in disguise. "I'll just be in the way," I said, more to myself than to him. Aaron shrugged. "It's just for a week, tops. We'll call you when it's all clear." I nodded, slow and quiet, like someone saying yes to a sedative. They didn't help me pack. I took one suitcase and my handbag, nothing else. left behind my quilts, my books, my garden gloves, things too personal to be touched by anyone but me, and yet too fragile to fight for just yet. When I turned back at the edge of the driveway, Kelsey was already on the front steps, phone in hand, pointing toward the living room through the open door. She didn't wave goodbye. Marcy's guest room smelled like lavender and clean laundry. She left a glass of water on the nightstand and a tin of lemon cookies. I didn't eat them. I just sat on the edge of the bed and stared out the window at my house, just 3 houses down. Except it didn't look like my house anymore. The lights were too bright. The porch chairs had been moved. The wind chimes were gone. By the 3rd day, contractors started arriving. Painters, electricians, a man with measuring tape and an iPad. Marcy made polite conversation at breakfast, asking if I knew what was going on. I just smiled and said, "It's probably nothing." But it wasn't nothing. One afternoon, I walked past and saw a realtor's sign go up. Not just a for sale sign. This one had glossy pamphlets in a box with photos of the kitchen, the master suite, and the backyard swing Carl had built. On the flyer, under property highlights, was a sentence that sent my heart straight through the floor. Currently vacant, move-in, ready. Vacant. I had just been erased. Like I never planted those rose bushes. Like I never taught Aaron to ride a bike in that very driveway. Like I never walked through that house barefoot at 2 a.m., rocking him to sleep. Later that night, I sat with Marcy on her porch. She tried to make me feel better. Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe they're just testing the market. I smiled politely, but deep down I knew I wasn't part of the conversation anymore. I was just a technical detail they hadn't figured out how to cleanly remove. Let me ask you something. Have you ever given someone everything? Your time, your care, your sacrifices, only to realize you no longer fit in the life you helped build? If that speaks to you, just comment forgotten. You're not alone. That night, I couldn't sleep. I got up and pulled out the yellow notepad Dolores had given me, the one where I'd been documenting every step. I wrote, June 3rd floor renovation was a lie. House now listed as vacant. No update from Aaron or Kelsey. I no longer have a key. No legal eviction notice. But I am out. And beneath that, I wrote, I disappeared without anyone noticing. The next day, Dolores called. Evelyn, she said, I've reviewed everything. It's worse than I thought. The power of attorney they used to mortgage the house is forged. The notary involved has had past complaints. We need to act, now. I swallowed. I'm ready. There was a pause. You don't sound angry, she said. I'm not, I said. I'm done being angry. I'm just done pretending I don't see what they're doing. Good, she said, because we're going to stop them. But we're going to do it smart, quiet, legal, clean. I nodded. No screaming, no slamming doors, just steady hands, quiet paper trails, and the power of knowing you're right, even if no one claps when you win. 2 days later, Marcy handed me her phone. You've got company, she said, smiling. Connor Rook, a name I hadn't heard in years. He was Carl's old friend, a man who once helped me fix a broken fence and later sent a Christmas card every year, long after my husband died. I saw your house in a real estate listing, he said over the phone, and something didn't sit right. You okay, Evelyn? I hesitated. Then I said the truest thing I'd said in months. No, but I will be. And just like that, I stopped disappearing. Marcy's guest room had one narrow window that faced the east. Each morning, the light would creep in, soft and gold, like the world was apologizing for yesterday. It was in that quiet room that I began to put things together, not just facts, but my sense of self, piece by piece. I didn't speak much during those days, but I wrote. Pages and pages in that little yellow notebook. Dates, times, overheard conversations, every contractor who entered my house, every receipt Kelsey left out on the counter, the real estate flyers with phrases like motivated seller and ideal for investment. I wasn't angry, I was focused. There's a clarity that comes with silence. When nobody's asking for your opinion, you finally have time to form your own, Dolores helped me file a formal complaint with the notary board. Turns out the signature on the power of attorney had come from a notary named Vicky Holtz, someone with a prior warning for improper documentation. Sloppy work, Dolores muttered. We'll use it. She also connected me with a legal aid attorney, a woman named Monica Alvarez, who specialized in elder abuse and fraudulent property transfers. Monica met me at the library. She brought coffee. After reviewing everything, she looked me in the eye and said, "You've got a strong case, Evelyn, but you need to be patient. Let them think they've won." I nodded. That part I was good at. Back at Marcy's, I started waking up earlier. There was something empowering about starting the day before they did. I'd walk a few laps around the block, pass by my own house, my name still on the title, whether they liked it or not. Kelsey had removed the wind chimes. Aaron had pulled up my roses, but they hadn't taken the roots, and roots run deeper than wallpaper and kitchen tile. One afternoon, I stood across the street and watched as a young couple toured the house with a realtor. I recognized the fake cheerfulness in Kelsey's voice. She gestured to the kitchen, to the open concept, to the cozy back porch. The couple smiled. They didn't know. They didn't know that porch was where Carl first held our son fresh from the hospital. They didn't know those floorboards still carried the echo of midnight lullabies and tired feet. That house was more than wood and paint. It was me. It still was. And for the first time, I realized they could try to sell the walls, but they'd never own the story. A week later, Monica filed the first legal motion. Petition to freeze the property sale due to contested ownership. It was quiet, it was formal, and it worked. The open house was canceled. Kelsey posted something passive-aggressive online about sabotage and family drama. Aaron didn't call. Good. Let them feel the weight of silence for once. At night, I made tea in Marcy's kitchen and watched the lights flicker in my old bedroom. "I know it's hard," Marcy said gently. "It's not," I replied. "Not anymore." And I meant it, because I wasn't clinging to the past. I was watching it reset itself, brick by brick, inch by inch, in my favor. There's something powerful about being underestimated. They thought I was gone, that I'd slipped away quietly, too old or too tired to fight. They were wrong. I hadn't disappeared. I'd simply stepped outside the storm to watch it collapse on them from a safe distance. I didn't gloat. I didn't shout. I just listened and documented and moved my pieces forward, one at a time. It was just a name, mine. Evelyn Callahan, still printed on the deed of the home I built with my husband, still listed as primary owner in county records, still legally recognized as the woman who had lived there for 31 years. But lately, it had felt like a name people whispered around like a ghost story, like I was something that used to be, not someone who still was, until the envelope came. Monica called me that morning. The county clerk finalized the hold. They've frozen any sale or transfer of your property until the case is settled. My hands didn't tremble. Not this time. That means they can't list it, they can't close it, they can't touch it, she added. And more importantly, the court now recognizes you as the rightful contesting party. I didn't cry. I just stood there, staring out Marcy's kitchen window, watching the leaves turn on the tree Carl planted the year Aaron was born. I finally felt it. Not victory, not revenge, but something deeper. I felt real again. 2 days later, Aaron called. It had been weeks of silence. I let it ring 3 times before picking up. "Mom," he said flatly, "what is this court thing?" He didn't say hi, didn't ask how I was. He was nervous, but trying not to show it. "You forged my signature," I said, calm even. "You filed fraudulent documents with a notary already under investigation." There was a pause on the line. I could hear him breathing. "I didn't mean for this to get ugly," he muttered. "It was just supposed to be temporary." "It was never yours to take," I said. "Not the house, not the right to decide when I leave, not my name." He went quiet. "I'm not going to scream at you," I added, "but I won't let this slide." He tried to speak, then stopped. I hung up first. The next day, I walked down to the post office and updated my address. No more C.O. Marcy Bennett. No more in-between spaces. I had Monica's team draft a notice of intent to reclaim occupancy, delivered by courier to the Barretts, my son and his wife. No anger, just words, legally sound, undeniable. I visited the property 2 days later, alone. The porch lights were off, the front door locked, but the moment I stepped onto that soil, I felt the ground greet me like an old friend. The grass wasn't mowed, the flowers were gone. But I was home, even just for a moment. I sat on the porch steps, quiet, present. This wasn't about court battles anymore. This was about reminding myself and the world that I hadn't vanished. A week later, I received a small envelope in the mail. Inside was a copy of the updated court record showing a pending trial date, and under it, my name, my full name. Not co-owner, not guardian-controlled, just me, Evelyn May Callahan, still standing, still heard, still on the record. Later that evening, Marcy and I sat out on her back patio with glasses of iced tea. "You seem lighter," she said. "I reclaimed something," I replied. "Your house?" she asked. I smiled. "No, my name." Because sometimes that's all a woman has left, and sometimes that's all she needs. You'd be surprised how loud silence can be. It was a week after the court froze the house transfer when I stepped back onto my front porch, not as a guest, not as someone asking permission, but as the woman whose name was still on the deed. Aaron wasn't home. Kelsey stood in the doorway like a statue, her arms crossed, expression tight. "You can't just show up," she snapped. "I didn't show up," I replied. "I walked into my home. There's a difference." She opened her mouth to speak again, but I'd already stepped past her. Not fast, not dramatic, just certain. There was nothing more to say. I didn't touch anything that didn't belong to me. But as it turns out, that meant I could touch quite a lot. I walked through the kitchen. They'd changed the countertops. Through the living room, new rug, but the same creak in the floorboards Carl never got around to fixing. Upstairs, the hallway smelled like lavender plug-ins. But in the corner of the closet, they'd left one of my old scarves, blue with faded gold stitching. I pressed it to my face and let myself remember just for a moment. I didn't cry. I didn't make a scene. I just stood in the home I'd built with decades of quiet love, and I let it remember me. Because walls do remember. Monica had filed a motion for temporary reinstatement of partial occupancy. Legal talk for, I could use part of the house while we waited for trial. Aaron didn't contest it. He probably thought I'd be too uncomfortable to come back. He was wrong. I moved into the guest bedroom, didn't ask permission, didn't explain myself. Every morning I woke up before dawn, made coffee, and took it out to the back porch. My back porch. Aaron tried to avoid me. Kelsey glared but kept her mouth shut. It was strange watching two people live in fear of someone who said so little. But silence has a gravity, and mine was growing. One night I heard Kelsey whispering loudly in the hallway. "She's watching everything. She writes stuff down. I saw her notebook." Aaron muttered something I couldn't catch. Then she said something that surprised me. "She's not going to yell, she's not going to fight, but she's not leaving either. That's worse." I smiled in the dark. She wasn't wrong. "Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked back into a room where they hoped you'd never return? What did it feel like being seen again, but on your terms? If that moment lives in you, drop a comment. Still here. Because sometimes presence is the loudest answer of all." A few days later, a notice arrived for Aaron. Court summons, trial date locked in. The words, "fraudulent transfer" in bold print. He read it at the kitchen table, rubbing his temple with the heel of his hand, didn't look up. Kelsey slammed a cabinet and stormed out. I didn't say a word, just kept sipping my tea. I'd found the rhythm of being back. Slow, intentional, respectful. I didn't reclaim the whole house. I didn't need to. I only needed the space I'd earned. And in that space, I found myself again. Marcy came by one afternoon with lemon bars in a foil tin. "You look stronger," she said. "I feel real again," I replied. "You always were." She paused. They're scared of you now, aren't they? Not of me, I said. Of the truth. And that's what silence can do. It doesn't shake the walls. It waits patiently until the people inside start shaking themselves. The morning was unusually quiet. Even the birds in the pecan tree held their breath like they were waiting for something to shift. I woke up at 5:12, not out of anxiety, but habit. Old women don't need alarm clocks when their bones keep time better than a Rolex. I stretched, pressed my feet to the floor, and felt the cold wood under my toes. My home. Still. I made coffee, stirred in a splash of milk, and stepped onto the porch with my notebook in one hand and a folded piece of paper in the other. The court's final pretrial ruling. The judge had granted temporary custodial oversight of the property to me. It wasn't a full win, but it meant one thing very clearly. I had legal authority to secure the home, and that meant changing the locks. The locksmith arrived at 9:45 a.m. He was young, polite, didn't ask too many questions. Need the whole house or just the front and back? He asked. I looked at the hallway where Kelsey once shouted into her phone about finally getting rid of the extra baggage. The whole house, I replied. He nodded and got to work. Each click, each twist of the screwdriver sounded like punctuation at the end of a very long sentence. By 11:05 a.m., every door had a new key, a new beginning. Aaron came home around noon. He found me in the living room calmly folding laundry while a casserole baked in the oven. "What is this?" he asked, holding the locksmith's receipt I'd left neatly on the counter. "Court order," I said, not even looking up. "You're welcome to make a copy of the key after the hearing if the judge agrees." He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't. Maybe the woman who once baked him birthday cakes and sat by his bed during the flu didn't exist to him anymore, because that woman never would have stood her ground like this. He left without another word. Kelsey texted me. "Is this your way of kicking us out? Passive-aggressive much?" I didn't reply. Some things don't deserve responses, especially from a woman who once whispered, "She's not really contributing anymore," when she thought I was asleep in the other room. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table and held the new key in my palm. It was nothing special, just brass, a little warm from my hand. But what it represented was something I hadn't felt in years. Ownership, not just of property, but of my decisions, my peace, my space. The next morning, I changed the labels on the mail slot, took down the Barretts, and replaced it with one simple name, Evelyn Callahan. That afternoon, Marcy came over with a small ceramic housewarming gift. "I know it's not your first time here," she smiled, "but it feels different now, doesn't it?" "It does," I said. "It finally feels like mine again." "You know what the biggest change is?" she asked, eyeing the front steps. "What?" "You're not waiting anymore, you're living." And she was right. For years I waited. For Aaron to call, for Kelsey to acknowledge me, for someone to say thank you, or even notice the quiet things I gave up. But now, I wasn't waiting for anything. I wasn't hoping for recognition. I wasn't looking for apology. I was rebuilding piece by quiet piece. Later that evening, I made a list of things I wanted to do. Repaint the guest bedroom, plant tomatoes, again. Donate Carl's old books to the library, invite Connor over for coffee. Just small things, but they were mine, and I didn't need permission. I slept with the bedroom window open that night, letting the spring air drift in. The wind carried no noise, no arguing voices, no footsteps I had to brace myself for, just the soft hush of wind through the trees. And the steady heartbeat of a woman who had finally remembered what it meant to belong. The sun was just dipping low when I heard the knock, 3 firm taps, like someone reclaiming a piece of ground. I opened the door to find Aaron standing there, nervous, holding a bouquet of marigolds, bright orange, stubbornly cheerful. His eyes met mine, and for a moment I wondered if I should slam the door in his face. But I remembered something Dolores once told me. Mercy isn't weakness. I stepped aside, letting him in. Inside, the house was calm. The new locks whispered of lines drawn, of firm boundaries. But I'd decided I didn't want a courtroom for every conversation. Aaron cleared his throat. "Mom, I'm sorry, he said, voice low. I paused beside the entryway table, the one where I'd placed the locksmith's receipt, the one that declared my right to be here. Why now? I asked quietly. He swallowed. I've been thinking a lot. About what you did, how you stood up. I realized I was wrong. I let Kelsey and my pride get in the way. He glanced at the marigolds. I brought these for you. His fingers gripped the stems like they were offering the world. I took the flowers and set them in a vase. The petals caught the last light of day and glowed. I never wanted this fight, I said, but I had to protect my home, my name, my history. He nodded. I get that now. A few moments passed in silence. Then he said, Kelsey wanted me to come too, but she didn't have the courage. I looked down the hallway and called softly, Kelsey? She stepped into view, arms wrapped around herself. The same hallway where she once painted over my growth chart. I'm sorry, she began. Her voice quivered. I was greedy. I forgot. This place belonged to you long before it belonged to us. She held out a small framed photo, Evelyn and Carl, young and smiling, on the day they moved in. I found this in my office, she said. I thought, maybe you'd like it back. I felt something shift. Not a grand gesture, not fanfare, just the quiet rush of years of memories welling up. Thank you, I said, taking the frame. I placed it gently on the mantel where it joined other photos of family and youth. We moved into the living room, 3 of us sitting on the sofa that still creaked in the familiar spot. Aaron cleared his throat. I want to make things right. If you'll let me. A few things I'd like to do. He laid out his plans. He'd donate the mortgage funds back to a local senior housing fund in Mom's name. He and Kelsey would volunteer at the community center where I used to teach the knitting class. He'd go to therapy to understand why he betrayed me, and Kelsey would join him. It was a lot. It was enough. Have you ever watched someone you love finally admit they were wrong and wondered if you could ever trust them again? If you've been there, type second chances below. Because sometimes redemption sounds like a whisper, not thunder. I listened. I nodded. I asked questions when something wasn't clear. I let them know I wasn't the woman who'd let her life be erased. Then I said, I won't erase your chance either. But there are boundaries. I pulled out my notebook and read them the 3 terms I'd written: therapy and accountability. They'd complete at least 8 sessions together. Volunteer commitment. 40 hours each at the senior center, helping with meals, activities, companionship. Respect for home. No more financial decisions without my involvement. They both nodded, relieved. I saw the gratitude in their eyes. Tentative, but real. That night, we sat down to a simple dinner: roasted chicken, vegetables from my garden, and biscuits baked fresh. Kelsey passed me the gravy boat. Mom, could you? She began, then paused. I nodded. She poured. Aaron raised his water glass. To new beginnings? He said. I raised mine. To family, I corrected, and we drank. Later, as they left, Aaron stopped at the door. Thank you, Mom, for giving us a chance. I smiled, stepping aside. Just don't make me have to take it back. He laughed, a genuine relieved sound, and closed the door gently behind them. I walked to the mantel where Carl and Aaron smiled in that old photo. The marigolds caught moonlight, petals bright as hope. I thought of all the years I'd given, quietly, without demand, of every birthday cake, every emergency run, every mile driven in the dark. And now I'd ask for just a little back. Respect, honesty, and space. Maybe that wasn't much, but in a house built on memory, those were the strongest bricks. The sky over Asheville burned in stripes of purple and rose, as if the world itself were staging a quiet finale. I sat on my front porch swing, the one Carl built so many years ago, its chains soft with patina and memory. The evening breeze carried the scent of honeysuckle, and in that scent, I found a measure of peace. I hadn't expected company tonight, but there she was, Dolores, walking up the drive with 2 mugs of chamomile tea. She carried herself with that same grace I remembered from our ER nights, always calm amid chaos. She'd asked if she could stop by one last time, and I'd said yes. She settled into the wicker chair across from me and handed me a mug. The tea smelled faintly of honey and good intentions. I took a slow sip, letting the warmth settle in my chest. "Look at that sky," she said softly. "You've earned this moment." I nodded. I watched the sun slip behind the horizon. In the fading light, I saw the house exactly as I always had. Weathered boards, a scattering of wildflowers at the foundation, and a porch that held every season of my life. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine again. Dolores cleared her throat. "So, did you ever forgive them?" Her question landed gently, like a pebble dropped into still water. Ripples of memory spread through me. Aaron's pleading eyes, Kelsey's apology, the courtroom's hush, the click of new locks. "I can't say I forgive what they did," I answered quietly. "They betrayed me, violated my trust. That part, I'll always carry with me." She waited, head tilted, gaze steady. "But," I continued, "I don't need forgiveness to move on. I don't owe anyone my pain. I've spent 77 years giving love, giving care, giving understanding, and I finally learned that I deserve something in return, my own respect." Dolores smiled, a small, proud curve of her lips. "That's something worth hanging on to." We sat in companionable silence, watching the colors fade to indigo. Crickets began their evening chorus, and the porch light flickered on. I wrapped my hands around the mug, noticing how the steam traced patterns in the air, like echoes of the past, rising and then vanishing. "I used to think the world applauded quiet sacrifice," I said. "But it doesn't. People move on. They forget. They sell your house out from under you without a second thought." Dolores sighed. "That's the thing about sacrifice. It's invisible." I thought of every casserole I'd carried to someone's front door, every stitch I'd sewn into a blanket, every midnight drive to the hospital, all invisible until the day they tried to erase me completely. "Tonight," I said, "there's no applause, no curtain call, just this, me, my porch swing, and a sky that doesn't judge." Dolores lifted her mug. "To the sunsets that follow storms." I clinked my mug against hers. "To the storms that remind us how strong we are." As the last of the light slipped away, I felt a gentle presence beside me. I looked down to see Connor standing at the edge of the porch, hand outstretched with a small bouquet of lavender. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said, voice low. "Never," I replied, taking the lavender and tucking it between the marigolds on the porch table. Connor eased into the chair next to Dolores. He gave me a soft, understanding smile. No expectation, just solidarity. He'd helped when I needed it most, not with grand gestures, but with quiet support, researching case law, dropping off cups of coffee, reminding me that I wasn't alone. We sat together, 3 friends, bound by different chapters of my story. The wind carried the distant hum of cicadas, and the night felt vast. Connor cleared his throat. "You did it, Evelyn. You took back your home. You took back your name." I looked at him, at Dolores, and then at the house behind us. It felt real again, not just a building, but a testament. "You did more than that," I said. "You reminded me that the only person who gets to decide my worth is me." We rose and stood in a loose circle at the top of the porch steps. Below us, the yard waited. My roses had regrown, stubborn and bright, like tiny flags of my refusal to disappear. The wildflower patch was blooming again, goldenrod and daisies swaying in the evening breeze. "I don't know what tomorrow brings," I said, "but I know I'll meet it on my own terms." Connor slipped his arm around my shoulders. Dolores slipped her hand into mine. Together, we watched the last glow of twilight fade. Have you ever carved out a space just for yourself, where you could be seen, heard, and respected on your own terms? If so, drop "I'm here" in the comments below. Let's remind each other that our stories matter, even when the world turns away. The porch light flickered again as the first stars appeared. I felt a gentle smile tug at my lips. No applause, no audience of hundreds, just the quiet company of those who understood and the knowledge that I belonged here. Tonight, the sun set without a curtain call, and I was perfectly okay with that, because I'd already given myself the only standing ovation I ever needed.